What's up guys, it is the end of July and we're going to do a monthly roundup to speed run some of the best IEMs. I don't have the chance to do them individually, so we're going to group them together and see if these are good, should you buy them, or maybe they're a skip. Starting with the Kefine Loric, these are a bassy all-rounder, very good bass texture, resolution is decent, good slam, good punch, pretty engaging overall. They remind me of a mini version of the Sivga EW300 with the red nozzles, and similar to some other bassy all-rounder like the new Nicehck Rumbas, you got the Earphone Vivas, Tangzu 1 or 2 bass, you got the GK Kefine 02s. These are a slightly more resolving, slightly better textured version of those when it comes to the vocals. The treble detail are slightly better than those, and they're around the same price, if not a little bit more or cheaper depending on the one that you're comparing to. Overall, in my opinion, I think these replaces all of them because they're just like a better detailed resolving version of those while still maintaining that bassy all-rounder sound, the punch, the impact, the slam, the texture in the low end, and good detail for the price overall. If you already have all the other bassy all-rounders, you don't necessarily need to upgrade to these because the difference is slightly there, but it's not like worth the extra $20-$30. But if you are looking for a bassier all-rounder kind of sound, you like a low-end punch, very good for hip-hop, R&B, pop in general, EDM, things that have a lot of slam and low energy, these would be my pick over all the other ones like the Vivas, the Rumbas, the Kefine, the 02s, and the 1 or 2 bass. Even though you can argue the 1 or 2 bass does have better accessories, but the cable on this is still pretty nice overall, and you're getting it as a package overall, like you're getting a pretty good deal. Genre wise, these will work for pretty much every library. You can safely hit shuffle on these. They're not fatiguing, but if you want like better layering, maybe try something else. These are not the best when it comes to orchestral stuff, classical stuff, instrumentals, things that are very, very busy. The layering, the separation isn't the best at its price. I would probably go for something like the Clean SVs, the Kindenza 2, something with like a leaner low end for those genres. But those aside, if you're just like listening to pop, K-pop, EDM, even rock, hip-hop, I think these are gonna fare very well and be very enjoyable. Then scaling wise, these do scale pretty decent, around 75 plus depending on the song that you're listening to. With K-pop, J-pop, maybe less, around like 70 or even 65. They're not too fatiguing. It does get slightly peaky sometimes in the higher frequency region, but only if you crank it up a lot or on like a very energetic K-pop, J-pop song. Overall, these do the job at mid to high volume. They're not gonna scale as good as something darker or something warmer like the Chorus, for example, or if you have the Explorer, you want something like that. These are not going to scale as well when it comes to that, but overall for most people who aren't blasting their brains out, they're going to do the job. Then tip and fit wise, I like the stickier tips like the liquid silicons, the medical grade silicons, anything like those will work. I'm using the clear ones right now, but the stock ones also work, they're just not going to be as comfy. Sound wise, not a huge difference. They're balanced tips, right? So you can go for something with a little bit more treble air if you want more energy like the Clarions. But overall, the stock ones work well. The overall ergonomics of the IEM is very, very comfy. It's light as well in the shell. It's got a metal plating, so it looks nice. Like the overall package, you get a nice cable as well for $25. You get a pouch. So when it comes to the overall sound and the value, I think these are pretty good when it comes to that. Again, out of the mini EW300s out there, I think these are the best iterations when it comes to the tuning and value wise as well, because they're on the same price as something like the Earphone Vivas and even cheaper than the Rumbas, but they're a little bit more technical in the vocals. If you're looking for a bassy all-rounder sound, these are a very good package overall, and I do recommend giving them a listen. Moving on, we got the Nicehck NX8 Ti's. These are also a limited run, I believe. These are a lot more balanced. They are slightly bright leaning. They're tamer when it comes to the low end. The main selling point or the pro factor of these is that the layering, the technical performance, the crispiness and the treble, the micro details, the clarity is very, very good for $400. These remind me of the Rockies when it comes to performance, but cheaper, but also not as quite as like smooth and refined, airy as the Rockies, because those do have the ESTs. These are not using them. And you can tell they are a little bit sharper, slightly more, I guess, like bite and harder when it comes to timbre versus the more airiness, ethereal factor of the Rockies. And when it comes to the nozzles, I do like the silver ones a bit more than the gold ones because they tame down the treble just a little bit more. They are already, bright leaning and already has a bit of energy when it comes to the sharpness, when it comes to the treble, the higher frequencies. So I don't think you need any more than that. So that's why I like the silver one more. The gold basically just boosts the overall brightness a little bit more. If that's your thing, obviously go for it. The only other IEM that is around its price that are similar in the performance is the Hype 4 Mark IIs, and those are going to be brighter when it comes to tonality, not going to be as neutral and clean and balanced as the NX8 Ti's. So depending on if you want a brighter sound, if you want a more neutral, more balanced playback, then either of those two are going to be very good when it comes to the value to performance. Now versus the T Pro SEs and the Top Pros, I personally still like the tonalities on those better because of just the vocal clarity, the overall fullness in the sound, and the more forward and more powerful mid-range on the Top Pros. T Pro SEs are going to be overall better balanced, more I guess you can say natural in the timbre, with less emphasis in the treble versus the NX8 Ti's. So tonality wise, I would still go for those two, but they are like almost $100 more, even $100 more. And performance wise, again, they're around the same. Genre wise, if you have a library with a lot of instruments that needs like very good layering, separation, you need a good sense of space so the instruments doesn't get in the way of one another. These do the job very, very well when it comes to the layering, the clarity, the overall just detailed resolution is very good. The only, I guess, drawback is that if you want more low end, if you want a warmer sound, these are not going to be it. The vocals are also not too forward. I would say they are more flat in the approach. These are not going to be as, I guess, immersive or forward when it comes to the singers. This is not a vocal set. They are more laid back. It just kind of does the job when it comes to the vocals. And similarly, when it comes to the low end, these are also very tame when it comes to the sub bass. It has enough mid bass to not sound scooped out, not thin or like unnatural, and in the timbre it's full enough. The drums, the string pulls, you hear them pretty well in the mix. It's not going to be like super forward or super textured when it comes to that. The main factor you're buying these for is, again, I would say the crispiness in the treble. The imaging is also very pinpoint, very sharp, and the overall performance is very good for $400. However, when it comes to scaling, these don't scale as good. They are around 65 to 70, maybe 75 dBs on a very low, I guess, like chill track. For most songs, you're looking at around like 65, 70. K-pop probably even lower at 60 because the treble does overly highlight the energy, and just like the sharpness when it comes to imaging can be a drawback if the song is more energetic overall. So I would watch out if you are sensitive in the treble, because also the low end and the vocals also pull back, so it reveals the treble more, allows the treble to kind of be more in focus, which is a good thing if you want more, I guess, like energy and more marked nuances in the mix. But that also means it can't get a bit energetic if you do crank them up too much. Then tip-wise, I am using the Venus Velvets to kind of fill in the low end a little bit more, tames down the energy slightly. But if you want a more clear, more balanced, cleaner sound, the stock clear blue tips are also very good. You also get a lot of tips when it comes to the accessories, so just play around with that. So in conclusion, should you get the NX8 Ti's, and who are these for? Now, if you want a very technical IEM, don't care too much about the vocals or the low end, these are gonna do that very well. Again, they're essentially a less smooth and airy version of the Rockies, but for $100 cheaper and equally as technical. If you're looking for something warmer, more musical, darker scaling, more powerful vocals, better bass texture overall, obviously these are not gonna be it. But subjective tonality, preferences aside, they are very good when it comes to performance. And if that's what you're looking for, give these a shot. Moving on, we got the Sivga LYREBIRD, and this is a vocal-centric IEM. I would say this is more of a niche IEM, but more unique in the sound. It's very vocal forward. It's got a nice attack to the notes, the transients. There's a slight sharpness when it comes to the consonants. Overall, it has that like slight bite, but without it being overly fatiguing at mid-volume, because this is a mid-volume set. It doesn't scale too well due to the lower bass region, and because of the more sharper transients, the treble, the vocals, the mids just pop out more overall in the mix. However, if you listen at mid-volume, these are very beautiful sounding. It has like a slight coloration, slight energy and brightness to the vocal, slight air, and the low end texture and decay in the mid bass is well done. Obviously, this is not a bass centric or focused set. It doesn't have any sub bass. It's pretty rolled off when it comes to that. If you're looking for like a deep extended rumble or like a very heavy slam in the low end, these would not be the set for you. And tip-wise, I would go with the stock white tips because it does tame down the treble more compared to the clear, more silicone, stickier tips, even though this doesn't fit as well as the clear one, but if you're looking for like less energy, these would be better. Similarly, the Venus Velvet Wise does that very well. Adds a little bit more texture and oomph to the low end while taming down the treble energy. So I found the just wider tips in general tend to work pretty good on these. Also pushes the vocal slightly back and not too forward when it comes to just like being in your face. These are basically made for slower vocals with very little instrumentations, just like a singer and piano and like a, guitar. Songs like, Frank Ocean, Self-Control, Billie Eilish, Wildflower, even some Ariana Grande songs like her newest album sounds pretty decent on these. All at mid to slightly higher, like 70 dBs. It doesn't sound too great on more energetic K-pop and J-pop. Like, yes, you can just turn down the volume, but in my opinion, I think the low end needs more impact. The overall just sharpness feels a bit too much when it comes to higher energy frequency songs. However, this also means the technical performance is very good, especially when it comes to the layering, the separation, the overall feel of space is pretty wide, and again, the vocals has a very nice sharpness. Imaging is very sharp and accurate when it comes to the attack, the consonants. Overall, technical performance wise, it is pretty solid for around like $150. I would say it's around the same level as the Divine. Then versus some other $150 sets like the Super Mix 4, you got the Daybreaks, even the $100 stuff like the Defiance. Performance wise, again, these are probably around the same level as the Daybreaks. May be competitive to the Super Mix 4 when it comes to the mid-range, the layering, but when it comes to the sub-bass impact, the rumble, and just like the smoothness of the treble, I would say the Super Mix 4 is slightly better there. But overall, again, this is pretty solid at $150. It's just that you can't really use these as an all-rounder because the low end is very rolled off in the sub-bass. And again, the vocals can't get too sharp, too forward, too shouty because of the lack of low end balance. So yeah, depending on what you're looking for as an all-rounder, obviously still get the Super Mix 4, the Daybreaks, even the Defiance would be better there, even though this is slightly more technical than the Defiance. But again, vocal wise, I would go these or the Divine depending on what you're looking for overall. And speaking of the Divine is basically a, I guess, more all-rounded version of these, but still vocal centric. It's not gonna be as clear and forward when it comes to the artist. It just feels a little bit more pulled back, a little bit smoother in the overall transients, not gonna be as sharp. I think for me personally, as a vocal set, I would actually go with the LYREBIRD. I think it's a little bit more unique in the overall sound. You do get better technical performance overall than the Divine. Not a huge difference, but when it comes to the treble, the imaging, the vocal detail, micro nuances, the breath, the air, it just pops out a little bit more because the sub bass is just pulled back and everything is just like a little bit more forward, right? However, like the Monolith, I don't think I can blindly recommend this to everyone because it is more of a niche IEM, but like if your library fits that and these aren't like super expensive, these are pretty solid for vocals in general, and I do recommend giving them a shot if you love vocals. If you don't, you just want an all-rounder, if you want a bassy set, then probably look for something else. Then moving on, we got the Binary Acoustics 1900. Now I only had a chance to really listen to them, so there's not a full review, just some initial impressions, but they remind me of the U9 Chue, but just without the sauce and the scaling, I guess the unique factor that the Chue had. This is more of a balanced all-rounder, similar to Harman, but without the upper mid energy. The texture is good, performance is solid. I don't really, have an issue with it, but I also don't love it. Like, it's not gonna be my top pick for around $200. It kind of reminds me of a smoother version of the EP321s, but now it just doesn't have the sauce and the treble and the technicalities. So overall, it's a good all-rounder first impressions again, but I personally think that there are better options for cheaper. For example, the Super Mix 4 Daybreaks if you want an all-rounder, and then if you want the sauce, the scaling, then I would still personally go for the Chue, even though it is like almost $200 more. For most of you guys who are looking for something special, for something for more different than just a balanced all-rounder, then this is probably a skip. Moving on, we got some CCA stuff. We got the Phoenix as well as the Rhapsody. Now sound-wise, these two are pretty different. The Phoenix has a balanced vocal-centric approach, very good technical performance, and overall like the transients is pretty nice for like $25 to $30. And the Rhapsody has a slight V-shape all-rounder sound with a sub-bass focused approach, has nice extension in the vocals, treble decently smooth, but there is a noticeable scoop when it comes to the lower mids. It does make the vocals sound a bit thin, shrill, a little bit too forward, and a little bit too like light and artificial sounding at times. This reminds me of a more sub-bass version of the Trio and very similar to the caster bass. This is not a huge difference, It just feels like they just reskinned it and just like released another IEM with more drivers. The technical performance is slightly better than the Caster Pro, but aside from that, the sound-wise, very similar. I would probably go with the Phoenix actually because it just has better balance. The mid-bass is more filled in, the vocals, just the timbre overall feels more full. It feels more natural on the Phoenix. While you still get like good vocal extension, good detail elsewhere, not gonna be as, I guess, exciting and energetic as the Rhapsody when it comes to the sub-bass texture, the slam, as well as just the energy, the air overall. However, when it comes to vocal and timbre and no way, the Phoenix does that better, and it's also, I guess, like almost half the price. Now, when it comes to longevity, I haven't had any issues with the Phoenix or the Rhapsody. You know, my channel balances are fine. No drivers dying on me or anything like that. But again, this is a KZ brand, this is CCA, and something might happen down the line. So, but the good thing is these are fairly affordable for the price. These are again 25. They punch like probably the same level as the Clean SV when it comes to just technical performance, and also very similar sounding as well. Has that, you know, kind of like clean balanced sound, but this is more mid-range focus, more mid-bass focus, and then the Clean is more balanced, it's like more sub-bass focus and slightly more, like, I guess you can say thinner when it comes to the mid-bass versus the Phoenix. But again, reputation-wise, I would say probably go for the Clean SV, just like safer peace of mind. And then when it comes to Rhapsody, I think I would actually just get the Caster Bass Edition because it fills in the lower mids. You get more sub-bass in general. Like, yeah, it's gonna be less technical and not as good in the layering. The overall treble feels smoother on the Rhapsody. But like, if you're buying it for the sub-bass, all-rounder, you know, more fun kind of sound, that does feel a little bit better when it comes to the timbre. Not bad sounding IEMs, just that, you know, it's KZ. Watch out for the QC. Then after those, we got the Tangzu Harmonic Empire Tai WENJI. These are a budget vocal-centric, smooth listening IEM, very non-fatiguing, very relaxing listen skills, very good when it comes to vocals. They remind me of the WENJI Studio Edition, but just like a higher volume version of it. I don't think you should be listening to these at mid to lower volumes because they feel a bit dead. The vocals feel gone. It feels very low res. If you wanna get the full potential from these Tai WENJI, I would definitely scale these up. Very good for vocal scaling. The power is there, pretty smooth. You get decent treble extension. You know, the bass is on the lighter side. It has a more neutral presentation when it comes to low end, like the WENJI Studios. But yeah, if this is basically a higher volume version of the WENJI Studios, if you like listening loud, they're 20 bucks, 15 bucks, right? They're not gonna break the bank, but they're not like super amazing value like the WENJI 2, for example, because cable wise, you do get a worse cable than the WENJI 2s. Accessory wise, you don't get as many tips. You don't get a pouch. The overall packaging isn't as good. You do get like a card, I guess, if you get like waifu cards, right? But yeah, like value wise, the WENJI 2 is definitely the better buy, like technical performance wise as well. I think the WENJI 2 does that better as an all-rounder. If you listen at mid to higher volumes around like 75 dBs, I think the WENJI 2, the WENJI 2 bass, those would all be the better all-rounder set, better technical performance, better imaging, etc, etc. But if you listen louder, if you want vocals, crank them up, right? These are a good budget vocal scaling set. It's just that overall value-wise, I think there are better stuff out there. So I'll probably wait and get these on sale because they don't do anything amazing. They are cheap and affordable, but the fit is also pretty, I don't know, they don't fit me too well even if I use the biggest tips because it has like a shallow fit and then it's got the edge and then the shape is also not super comfy. So I would watch out for that. You might need to like play around with the tips. And then when it comes to cable, this is a pretty, you know, cheap cable. Like it's what you expect from KZ and stuff like that. So this is basically a cheaper version or like a more budget, even more budget version of the WENJI 2s. And it more competes with the KZ and CCA stuff at around $10. If you can get these for 10 bucks, I think these are pretty decent, right? You can't really complain for $10. But yeah, I would definitely shop around first before pulling the trigger because the low end is definitely gone. And then performance wise, the bunnies, the WENJI 2s, you know, the Zero Ultimas also more comfy than this, all gonna be much better when it comes to technical performance. You're buying these for the scaling and the smoother vocal listen. But if that's not what you're looking for, you want all-rounder, there are much better options for 20 bucks or less. Then lastly, we have the BEYERDYNAMICS DT30IEs. These are a very flat monitor-like IEM. They're pretty much made for live musicians. They scale very good. They're non-fatiguing, very smooth in the overall sound, but at the same time, when it comes to technical performance. This is not gonna be very good for value, especially when it's around like 150. Basically, if you need a flat sound that scales very good, so like if you're a live musician, you need to hear the instruments, you need to crank them up without like hurting your ears. This would do the job for that. But for regular listening to music, I think these are a bit too flat in my opinion, because the overall vocals, even after you crank them up, they're not as immersive as I would like them. The staging is very good, so that is a positive on that. But the bass texture is just kind of okay. The treble extension, not very airy. And you know, it does the job. Like, it's not gonna wow you. It's not gonna be super engaging. Again, this is more flat. Also, the fit is a bit weird. It has like this shallow angle, and these stock tips did not fit me at all. Even the bigger one, they just won't seal. So you need like a bigger, wider tip so it sits like on the, you know, outside of your ears, because you can't push it in too much. When it comes to everyday enjoyment as an audiophile, I found very few songs to actually sound like amazing on these. Like, for example, indie stuff, rock stuff, bands, those sound a little bit better because of the drums, the rhythmic section. This is more a linear, you know, mid-bass kind of glide. So that does work with rocks and stuff like that. But when it comes to like hip-hop, you know, EDM, K-pop, pop in general, vocal ballads, these do not do the job. They sound just a bit too flat, a bit too neutral when it comes to that. It does sound very, very low res at, you know, mid to lower volume. These are not a lower mid volume listening IEM. You need to scale these up or they just sound very lo-fi. It's not super expensive, though the value isn't horrible, but obviously these are not a value banger like the Supermix 4, the Daybreaks. I would say if you can get these for around 100 or less, ideally under 100, I would say probably go for them if you want a flat, you know, non-fatiguing, smooth IEM. But if you want something that is bassier, the Full Explorer does that and better. And if you want a, you know, more musical mid-range, the Sivga Lush does that also better. So this is kind of in a weird spot. I don't want to say this is dead on arrival, but again, I wouldn't recommend this to most people out there for listening to music. Again, if you're a musician, you need it for like live performances, these would be okay. But outside of that, I would say probably not. But that aside, that is all for this little speedrun review. I hope you found this to be helpful. If you have any more questions, you know, comparisons, drop them in the comments. I'm going to try my best to answer them because I am again on vacation. I can't really go in depth on every IEM. But yeah, that aside, I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see everyone in the next one.
Shout out to Mr. Dom Q, Zenu, B. Urac, Walker Standard, User, Tsukasa, Guava Juice Bane, Polly J, Mr. Gorillas, CT Jack, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Obi, PM the Wizard, Treble Well Extended, Matt Herc, Tier 8107, Shrimpback Lay, Addy, Michael, Trackstar, Raphael, Ori, Juniper, Ryan, FN Nadeem, Chemika, Raj, Gilbog, Ocean, BC Knight, AK131, MN Gelato, Unbalanced Armature, Vitor Ken, Torcog, Hakase, JRX, Samuel, John Simon, Archie, Sir Eisen, LL Here, JPLA, Blue Nerd, Firto, Watjo, Spinner, Sam Z, Raj, Yaboy, Etune, Grizzly, Leanne, Mark M, Sircool, Francis, It's Mark, Hedgehogs, Nostov, Kuya Josh, Net Zero, Nerm BMS, Urian, Benjamin, Hightech, Bizardo, Rim1, Mr. Roboto, Ace, GGG, Gaming, Twinkie, AST, and Young Mr. Thank you guys so much for the support.